Hello and welcome to Where Are They Now with Mario Toneguzzi on MegaPixx Media, brought to you today by Spolumbos. Joining me today is Jack Neumann, a former sports information director with the University of Calgary Dinos athletic program. Thanks for joining us today, Jack.
Always good to chat with you, Mario.
Okay, Jack, let's start off by just asking you, when did you officially retire from your position?
Well, there's essentially two retirements. I retired as sports information director in 2009. And then I worked for 3 years part-time in fund development for the University of Calgary Athletic Department, raising money for scholarships and things like that. But the official day that I left the university and with no benefits and anything like that was September 1st, 2012.
Okay, let me just go back in time. When did you start at U of C in that role, and how did that come about?
August 1st, 1978, Mario, right after the August long weekend. Commonwealth Games were in Edmonton, and I started the following Monday.
Okay, and how did that come about?
That's quite interesting, Mario. That might be a story in itself. As you know, I went to the University of Saskatchewan and was a business graduate and an economics grad, but I always dabbled in sports in the administrative angle when I was going to the university. I was probably an SID without knowing what an SID was, because I was manager of the hockey team there for 2 years at the University of Saskatchewan. And one of my jobs was to do the media profiles, phone in scores and results, and do all that kind of stuff. And I actually got involved in sports way back in when I was in high school at Walter Murray Collegiate. But anyways, fast forward, I moved to Calgary in 1970, and I got involved with the Little League Baseball under Joe Shea. And then I got involved with Calgary minor hockey a bit. And then I got involved with the Calgary Canucks under Cease Patke and the late Doug E. Scott. And I was PR guy for the Canucks for 2 years, 2.5, actually 3 years. And I got to know the media quite well and stuff like that. And then it was really interesting. I ran into somebody at a social event, and they were retiring. She was leaving the University of Calgary. Joyce Fromson was her name. And she said, "You should apply for that job." And it was on a social event. I'd had a drink or two. And I said, "Look, I'll give you a call Monday and we'll talk about it." So I applied for the job, and I think there was some 80 odd people applied for it. And they whittled the list down to 5. I had an interview and got the job. And I was actually given the job, offered the job in mid-July of 1978, when I was a revenue accountant at Total Petroleum here in Calgary, and gave my 2 weeks notice, changed careers, took a loss in pay, lost a stock option, worked longer hours, signed a 1-year contract, and stayed for 30 years.
So you had a couple of great bosses there, Jack. I wanted you to talk about a couple of them in terms of the athletic directors at the U of C who really made that program shine. Let's talk about, first of all, Dennis Cadazz.
Dennis hired me with no real formal experience or formal training, but a lot of, I guess you'd call it, self-training by working with the media when I was with the Canucks and Little League Baseball. So Dennis took a chance and hired me, and for that I was forever grateful. And I was very, very fortunate. When I was started at the University of Calgary in 1978, I was blessed to work with, and I'll use the word work with, not work for. I worked with late Dennis Cadazz and Dean Roger Jackson. And it was exciting. I was at the right place at the right time. The 88 Olympics were coming to the university. I was involved with setting up a couple of media relations events along the way with that. It allowed me to grow professionally, which was super. And then I was blessed in the mid-'80s and throughout my entire career at the University of Calgary to have great coaches to work with, like Derek Snelling, fabulous swim coach, taught me a lot about swimming. For a guy that can't swim, I became a pretty decent swimming SID. Donna Rodakis, women's basketball, Peter Cannellan, iconic football coach, Mike Lashik, George Kingston, Kevin Boyles of men's volleyball, Greg Ryan, men's volleyball, Brad Kill, women's volleyball, and Gary Howard. And I was so blessed and to work with so many great coaches.
Yeah, exactly. Jack, you know, obviously, let me just, before we go back in time, let me just ask you what you're doing now, because you really haven't left.
Yeah, I'm retired, but I'm actually fairly busy. I volunteer. I'm on the board of directors of the Alberta Sport Hall of Fame in Red Deer, and I really enjoy that because I really want to preserve the history of sport in the province, and that's something we must do. And I'm involved with that. I'm involved with the Edwards School of Business at the University of Saskatchewan in a couple of projects where I graduated from. And I'm also involved with Dinos football still as the unofficial team historian. I do recruiting announcements, basically helps with some fundraising, even though I'm retired. And I just enjoy being around football. And I'm grateful to Coach Harris for allowing a retired guy to be part of the program still.
Well, you mentioned the Dinos football program, and I want to talk a little bit about that and others, obviously. But the Dinos football program, 1983 Vanier Cup in Toronto.
Yeah. There's a few stories there that can't be told, Mario.
Yeah, I know. I sure. I'm many a night on Yonge Street leading up to that. but you know, and that for me was, you know, close to the beginning of my career in Calgary as a sports reporter too. But that to me, you know, the Vanier Cup win over Queens by that Dino program, what did that victory mean for the university as a whole and the sports programs at the university?
Well, I think you have to go back a couple of maybe 6-8 weeks before that. And you and I were there, and we've talked about this before. It was October 8th, 1983, where Greg Vavre had that incredible game against the University of Saskatchewan that gave the program national and international exposure. It put the Dinos on the map nationally, and we catapulted that into the Vanier Cup. We won a great Vanier Cup game against a very good team from Queens. It shouldn't have been that close, but it was close. It cemented the program in the city of Calgary. It started what was the fifth quarter now. Those parents started it thanks to the visionary of Peter Cannellan and Dennis Cadazz. And the fifth quarter now has given us a great base of alumni. We probably have the best alumni organization in all of Canada. I remember the late Keith Jackson from ABC Sports coming up to do our dinner. And he was at our dinner one year. He was at our dinner, and trust me, he's done a few dinners over the years. And Keith says, this is an NCAA Division I organization and dinner.
Wow.
And that, and I think the 83 Vanier Cup put the program on the map, and it stayed there. And it's thanks to the alumni and to the parents in that group. And now we're in the second generation of that group now.
Yeah. Can you just elaborate for those out there that don't understand what Vavre did that day? Can you elaborate and just tell people what that performance was all about?
Well, Mario, I don't have the stats in front of me, but he completed 20 consecutive passes. He only played 3/4 of the game, and he passed for, I think, 6 or 7 touchdowns, 627 yards of passing in 3/4 of game, which I think still is a U Sports record. And basically he was unstoppable, and it put him in Sports Illustrated, and from there it went all over the place, and we got national exposure and international exposure because of that. And basically it was we were down at the half, as you know, Mario, and then he took control of the game. No, I don't think we were down at the half, but I think we were down 21-3 or something at one stage in the game, and we wound up winning the game 60-30 or something like that.
So is that the biggest single performance by an athlete that you've ever witnessed at the U of C?
Pretty close. Excuse me. Yeah, pretty close, Mario.
Yeah.
It was.
Hey, Jack, name off some of the athletes that you that kind of
Oh, Mario, that's I really don't like doing that because there's some great performances. Carl Tillman, I mean, you never knew what Carl was going to do one night. He could shoot the ball like you wouldn't believe, and he did all this before there was the 3-point basket, as
Yeah.
you know. He was a fabulous, fabulous athlete. Vavra, Timmy Petras was running in the Vanier Cup with that great offensive line. Comes to mind, Jody Evans used to get triple doubles in women's basketball, which at that time was unheard of. Our swim program under Derek Snelling with, I think we had 3 members of our swim team that were on the individual medley relay team that Canada won a bronze medal with, were USC swimmers. It was just simply incredible. Yeah, there's a lot of great performances. Randy Ginchera, men's volleyball, Kevin Boyles as a coach and as a player, men's volleyball.
Yeah.
Those great basketball teams that Donna Radakis had at the University of Calgary. Leanne Doan was a fabulous player, one of the best players to ever play at the USC. Janice Paskovich, another great player. The list goes on, Mario. I don't like doing it because I'm going to miss some people. Women's soccer, some fabulous athletes.
Field hockey.
And some great people, yeah. Michelle Kahn in women's field hockey. Michelle was one of the greatest field hockey players this province produced.
So when you look back, obviously, as you mentioned, tons and tons of great athletes.
Yeah.
Tons of successful seasons, whether they were national championships or Canada West championships, etc. So tons of success for this UFC program. What do you think maybe your biggest disappointment was?
Mario, probably the fact that we've never won a men's national hockey championship.
Really?
Yeah, we had some great teams, fabulous teams, but just have not won the big one. We had some great coaches, George Kingston, Willie Desjardins, some great program, and we just couldn't find a way to win the key game and win a championship. We've won every other major sport in the country at the USC, but probably men's hockey is. I've always wanted us to get our mitts on the University Cup, but didn't happen in my time.
Let me ask you, Jack. Obviously, any university program in sports, can't be successful without the support, from the university itself, right? And can you go back in time and explain, in terms of the support that the university gave to this program to make it and to reach this level?
I was blessed to work with some fabulous presidents that believed in athletics. And the first one that I dealt with was the late Dr. Norman Wagner.
Yeah.
Wagner and Roger Jackson and Dennis was a fabulous triumvirate that made sure athletics was in the forefront. It was really it was fabulous. The late Murray Fraser was believed in athletics. Dr. Cannon, Terry White, and now Ed McCauley.
Yeah.
Because if the leaders at the start, the leaders don't lead, Mario, followers don't know where to go.
Yeah, no, that's true. Okay, Jack, I'm going to ask you some questions about the media. Since you knew us so well over the last
times have changed, Mario.
Let me ask you.
Not for the better.
Yeah, I've had these discussions a lot with people, from the past, right? And I always say that to me, the glory years were in those 1980s for sport.
Absolutely.
Tell me what role the media played at that time in the success of the university program.
Well, at that time, there was a good staff of reporters at all, not only the print media, but the electronic media in Calgary, who believed in covering university sport. It was a different world. The Olympics were coming. There was always something happening up at the university, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. I believed in communication. I'd pick up the phone and call people rather than sending them a text message or an email. And if you had a problem or disappointed with the way something was covered or wasn't covered,
Yeah.
you didn't send that person a text message. You didn't send that person an email. You picked up the phone. You dealt with it face to face like we're doing right now, or even met together over over lunch and discuss the issue.
Yeah.
And it was very, very well. Like we had and at that time too, we had a group of young media people that were aggressive and that wanted to start and worked hard.
I'm
Think of
one of them, right, Jack?
you're one of them, but but people like Steve Simmons
Yeah.
and people like that cut their teeth on the university beat. Al Mackey,
Yeah.
same thing. And then we had some veteran people that were around as well, like Ken Newens. And Kenny led by example, people like that. Grant Pollock. Those people cared about amateur sport. They cared about Calgary. And it was great. And everything was a function is in the newspaper business space. Papers were bigger than what they are now, thankfully, in those days. And there was TV sports. It wasn't just satellites didn't exist, or they were just starting to come then in those days. So instead of taking highlights from a hockey game and around, they needed live action. So they'd come up to the USC, and if there's nothing gone there, they'd go cover junior hockey or something like that, or high school sports. I can't recall the last time I saw a high school sports story in any of the media here in town today.
And yet, as I said, in the 80s, it was natural, right?
It was natural. That's right. Like, I mean, you take a look at a guy like Steve Simmons.
Yeah.
His first assignment was to cover the Calgary Canucks.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I always recall, how all this, and, I was a young reporter at that time, 1983. I was only 3 years into Calgary, right? 1982, 83, 3 years into Calgary.
Seems like yesterday.
I was always amazed. Yeah, like all the sort of iconic sports people were at, high school games or at university games, whether they were the Ken Newens or the Russ Peaks or, the Robert Scotts of the world, you name it.
Gary Arthur,
all those guys, attended those games. And that was, that's what gave me my foundation of realizing how important local sports is in this community. And the U of C, took that to another level, right? Because it became, a national powerhouse in all the sports.
Like in the 80s, we won so many national championships. And the big year was 88, 89. We won 5.
Wow.
And they weren't just little ones either. We won both volleyballs, women's basketball, men's swimming, and Vanier Cup. And you know what's interesting about that, Mario? The best team we had on campus that year, other than the women's basketball team and the men's volleyball team that essentially went undefeated, was men's hockey.
It is interesting, eh?
They were ranked. They were ranked number 1 going into the national tournament.
Isn't that interesting, right? Because sometimes the best teams don't always win the national championship, right?
You got that right. Sometimes it's the best team that wins the national championship. All you have to do is look at the 2019 Vanier Cup team. And I've been around the Dino football program since 1978.
Yeah.
Yes, they were a very good team, but they were a team.
Yeah.
And that wasn't our best team. We were 6-2. We came within 1 play of losing in the semifinal to Manitoba.
Yeah.
But it was one of the best teams.
And let's not forget 1984, Jack, right? The year right after the Dinos won the Vanier Cup. 84 team unfortunately didn't. And in my mind, that was the best team ever.
It was a very good team. We had a couple of good teams under Blake Nill in this past decade, but in your era before the tournament, that 84 team, we won in 83, yes, we won in 85, but the 84 team, and we've talked about it many a time, at Spolumbo's, that was a fabulous team.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jack, this has been a pleasure reminiscing about the old days. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us.
Mario, it's always nice talking to you. It was great to talk about a trip down memory lane. Thanks so much for taking the time to get in touch with me, and we'll see each other again sometime soon.
Okay, thanks, Jack. That was Jack Neumann, former Sports Information Director with the University of Calgary Dinos program. This has been Where Are They Now with Mario Toneguzzi on MegaPixx Media, brought to you today by Spolumbo's. Thanks for joining us.